Do you remember that Atlanta, Georgia police officer who was caught on video kicking a woman in the head? Well, he's no longer a cop. The Atlanta Police Department's Office of Professional Standards recommended the termination of Sergeant Marc Theodule, and Chief Rodney Bryant agreed, saying, quote, "I want our officers and the public to know that I do not take terminating employees lightly. But I also understand that the Atlanta Police Department must be held to the highest standards, and with that comes accountability when departmental policy is violated. Considering all the facts, I support the findings and recommendations made in this case." Officer Bridget Citizen, the other officer on the scene, was reinstated. The investigation found Officer Bridget Citizen did not violate the Atlanta Police Department's duty to intervene policy. There was only one kick. I want to go back to my panel, Michael Hotep, and Hotep, Dr. Niambi Carter, and Kelly Bethea. With this particular situation, and Brother Michael, we'll start with you on this one. With this particular situation of what's happened in Atlanta, is this justice?
Well, with the officer being fired?
Yes.
Well, that appeared to be assault to me, so I think he should be prosecuted as well. That's a good start that he's fired, because sometimes oftentimes we see situations where the officer is not fired. So that's a good start. And this was blatant. It was caught on camera. You know, now it's just interesting. It just happened to be a black officer, and he gets fired. Right. I want to see the videos of the white officers doing things like that and get fired as well and get prosecuted also. But this is a start, but that's assault. He should be prosecuted. He should be prosecuted also.
Dr. Carter, I know that sometimes terminating officers, it can be a sticky situation. Let me tell you, I have to tell you personally, in Baltimore, I have always railed against the FOP here, the Fraternal Order of Police Union, because the union oftentimes taking the stance with the officer and not the stance of truth and right and justice in my case, in the cases that I've seen here in Baltimore City. But, you know, I mean, at this point, you know, what needs to be done from that place where the unions feel like the unions have to separate themselves from these officers and their bad acts, that they can't continue to protect these officers, even though these officers are part of the force, but they shouldn't be allowed to continue to protect them. You know, I feel like that's the part of this conversation of police brutality that often gets overlooked.
Well, you're exactly right, Faraji, in terms of the outsized influence that police unions have in many of these cities and localities where we see these events occurring. And you can have, you know, officers be as blatant and as wrong as day, and you still have these police unions saying this person deserves their job, this person deserves representation, and all these other things, right? That basically this person should get out of jail free because they're police officers. And I think we have to start changing that mindset where police officers are subject to the same law. They just happen to have a job where it's enforcement of the law, but they're not above the law. I think that's part of it. But I think the other part is fraternal orders of police, or the unions, excuse me, have to also define what their mission is. And their mission ultimately is to support and to protect the public and to protect citizens, not police officers' bad actions. If they want us to believe this sort of few bad apples comments, then that means you cannot support the corrupt. That means you cannot support the abusive. That means you cannot support the disrespectful, and so on and so on. And oftentimes we say that police unions see their effort as being supportive of officers and officers only, and not to truth and justice and righteousness, right? All of the things that we think police officers should be about. So I think we have a long way to go, really, before we can change this culture, and that's part of it. And I think making police officers more accountable is going to start with making these unions less influential than they are.
Kelly, how do we empower the police chiefs to take more of a stand when they have bad actors within their department? This police chief said, considering all the facts, I support the findings and recommendations made in this case. However, he still seems, and I'm speaking of Chief Rodney Bryant, he still seems to be in an anomaly when you're talking about police chiefs kind of going against their officers. How do we empower them to make those decisions?
I think it comes from societal pressure, which is mounting at this point, especially given the recent history of police brutality within the past 45 years, starting with Trayvon Martin. Actually, that was more than 4 or 5 years ago. But I remember with Trayvon Martin and the cases since then, there has been this mounting pressure by way of the Black Lives Matter movement, by way of Black people just being, damn tired of it all, pushing and pressing their officers and the powers that be to have something changed within the system. What I have noticed in that pressure, however, is that the response that these police chiefs do, or the people who are in position to hire and fire the officers who commit these atrocities, is that it almost feels like it's easier for them to fire immediately Black officers because subconsciously they feel like, they were going to mess up anyway, somehow, some way. And if they fire this one, it's like, look, we do discipline. Look, we do this, but you're not doing it for your white counterparts. So there's levels to it and there's some nuances to it, but it all starts with societal pressure and really just being aware of racial tensions, being aware of the cultural shift, meaning police officers are not the end-all be-all when it comes to law anymore. They are no longer the overseers of the country anymore. We are accountable for our own actions. Community policing is a thing within the community, not necessarily having police officers in the community to police. There's a difference. That culture is shifting. And the more police chiefs across jurisdictions, across the country, realize that the culture is shifting, that even their own police officer base is shifting. Like the people coming in, their mentality is also shifting. The sooner they realize that, the quicker change will appear in policy and in action and in policing overall in this country.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that, Kelly. And I think that, and I love how you said that there has to be like a solid pressure because even though folks aren't protesting in the street as much as they used to, as we saw last year, the fact is that we have to keep the fire going. And I'm as an organizer, as an activist, that is one of the hardest things that I think people grapple with when it comes to these issues. Consistency is key. Consistency is everything. That's one of the hardest things, that if you want to see the change that you believe should happen, you have to be the catalyst for that change. And Brother Michael, I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds just to kind of speak to that, but you got to be the catalyst of change. You can't just say, we did this last year and expect stuff to change this year.
Well, consistency comes from actually having a plan.
Facts.
And oftentimes people confuse just protesting as the plan. Protesting, marching, those mass protests, those are tactics. That's not a plan. And this is one of the mistakes that people make, even evaluating the civil rights movement. Okay, what's lacking today are targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies, targeted, sustained economic boycotts, because oftentimes we're not operating from a plan. Many people mean well, but they really haven't studied those strategies that work properly in the past. Dr. King, April 3rd, 1968, his last speech, I've been to the mountaintop, which is 43 minutes. People focus in on the last 2 minutes when he talks about getting to the mountaintop. He said, we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. We have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. This is what's missing right now with trying to force through the For the People Act. The proper economic pressure is not being put on corporations, who will then put pressure on Manchin, Senator Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, because they help finance them, and then some more Republicans in the Senate, because you need 60 votes to get the bill passed in the Senate. So a lot of people say this is not your grandfather's civil rights movement. Well, you need to go study your grandfather's civil rights movement and what it came out of, because it was successful, but it was derailed. It was successful, but see, it was derailed. It was not able to complete. And then the next level, the Black Power movement comes out of SNCC in 1966 and comes out of the civil rights movement. So we have to understand these movements together. And then at the same time that the Black Power movement and the civil rights movement was taking place in the U.S., the African liberation movement was taking place concurrently on the continent of Africa. And today, by the way, is Jamaica's Independence Day. August 6, 1962, Jamaica declared their independence from Great Britain.
Back to that Roland Marc Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek is a streaming platform for virtual events and virtual reality experiences featuring the biggest names in music, sports, and entertainment from around the globe. So take Seek Sizzle and take a look at this. But the Seek's mission is to enable content creators to directly generate revenue from a global audience on multiple devices, including VR headsets, smart TVs, gaming consoles, mobile and desktop devices. Now, whether you're a gamer, music, or sports enthusiast, Seek has something for everyone. Go to seek.com, that's CEEK.com, and use Roland Martin Unfiltered's discount code RMVIP21. That's a smooth discount code. RMVIP21 for your next purchase. All right? And that's at seek.com.